This is the Red Podcast.
This is episode number 74. We're talking about selling via video. We've got a 4-step formula you can follow to make sure your video converts and makes you money. Also, we've got 4 video options for you, including 3 that work even if you don't like to be in front of the camera. That's coming up on this episode of Red Podcast.
This is the Red Podcast. Real entrepreneur development. Make more money. Work less and live a life of freedom. No BS advice that really works. Here's your hosts, David Hooper and Laurel Staples.
You're back. Laurel Staples is back.
I'm back. I even had a request to come back after one episode you did by yourself.
How'd that make you feel?
Feels really good.
Yeah, the whole thing just fell apart when you left. Just like when you leave town and I start ordering pizza and I'm staying up all night and the dog is just, who knows if he's being taken care of.
I think you do a good job.
I do a good job with the dog.
You're very capable at the podcast. It's just hard to do it by yourself all the time.
Well, you've been busy with Project X. Actually, the last couple of weeks, you and I have been out on location shooting a lot of video.
That's true. We went to the library.
We weren't supposed to be in there. It was a renegade shoot.
That's what you said. I was in the zone. I don't think anyone cared.
Everybody was looking at us. The librarian was looking over at me. And maybe it's just because my mother was a librarian and I'm having these like PTSD moments of shh. But I was waiting for her to come over because we're videotaping Laurel. We've got this scene. And, well, we'll explain this in the future here when Project X gets officially launched. You're going to announce that in the next couple of podcasts, right?
Very true.
We were trying to be pretty incognito about it. We've had that happen before with your photo shoots. You've done photography with a lot of musicians, and sometimes they don't feel like paying the location fees, so we just sneak on in, try to get those shots, and sneak right back out.
I've gotten kicked out of places before, that's for sure.
I remember we did this one shoot at the fairgrounds, and there was a gun show going on that weekend. We were there with a musician, and I was assisting. My job was to light off all the pyrotechnics and smoke bombs. And I was waiting for guys to think we were being invaded by terrorists and come over with their guns.
Fortunately, a couple of the smoke bombs were pink, so I don't think anyone was going to be on high alert for our pink smoke bombs, but it was pretty awesome.
Well, Laurel is back. Project X, it will be announced here very, very shortly within the next couple of episodes. It's very exciting. We're going to be sharing the process with you of her launching this company. That's the thing that separates Red Podcast from others. This is real entrepreneur development, and we call it that because we're actually in the trenches. We're not gurus telling you what to do without having done it. We actually do it ourselves. What is Red? As I mentioned, it stands for Real Entrepreneur Development. We help you build an audience, sell more products, and make more money. How do we do that? I call it personality marketing. It's by bringing your personality and the personality of your products to the forefront so you become famous within your industry and beyond. We've done it for a while, Laurel.
Oh, yeah. We have how many years of combined experience? 30 plus.
I don't know. I don't know if I would say that. It's like when you go to the mechanic, like, we got 100 years of combined car mechanic experience. You know, some people, they live the same year over and over. So they've got 100 years of that same year. Video marketing is part of selling the big vision of Project X, and that's what we're talking about here on this episode. How to be successful with video sales letters. Laurel, you've done a lot of those.
I've done a few, and Project X we are launching on Kickstarter. And Kickstarter is slightly different with their video process. You want something more creative, a little more engaging, but still it's the same process that you'd use to sell a digital product, to sell software as a service or something like that. So we're going to go through the steps that it takes to create a great video that's going to communicate to your customers what you do, how you do it, and make it easy for you to sell things online.
So let's go over the basic sales letter format, and this applies whether you are doing a video, it applies to audio, it applies to the written word. It's called AIDA. The first A, it stands for attention. This is basically your headline. This is where when somebody clicks on your video, it makes them want to continue watching.
And you said headline because in traditional sales letters, in long-form sales letters and the like, you have that big headline at the top that tells people what they're going to get if they read the rest of your letter. For instance, how to lose weight in 30 days or less without dieting. That would be your headline. So You want to take that format and put it into video in a way that grabs people's attention, maybe with their pain point right there, but you have to have some way to grab their attention or people are going to just click off. I mean, they're just going to leave with a click of a button.
Second part of the formula is interest. This is where you build rapport. And if you think of face-to-face sales, this is where you kind of get to know the guy. He knows that you've got something he might be interested in, but this is where you make him like you, know you, and trust you. Rapport could be talking about something completely different than what you're selling, or it could be talking about something that is going to make him trust you, such as, for example, with Red Podcast, we mentioned at the beginning of this episode that entrepreneurship is what we do. We don't just teach it, and that builds interest among people. That would be the second part of the series.
For the weight loss example that I gave earlier, David, about grabbing their attention with the headline, kind of bringing that to the video in some way, shape, or form, how would somebody that was creating that video go on to create interest with that target market?
If I was selling a weight loss product, if I had actually lost weight myself, I would tell my story.
Mm-hmm.
3 years ago, I was just like you, sitting there reading an ad about a weight loss product. I was completely frustrated with myself. I was 200 pounds overweight. My cardiologist said that if I didn't change my lifestyle, I was going to die. My wife was getting ready to leave me. I knew I had to make a change. You're showing the prospect that you understand where they're coming from, and that's what's going to get them to keep reading, because all of us are prospects at something, and we've all been pitched, especially, it's funny you mentioned the weight loss market. Very, very competitive, and people are skeptical. They think, yeah, it might work for some people, but it's not going to work for me. This is where you show your prospect that, yes, this will work for you, so keep listening. The third part of the 4-step process is desire. And of course, you're starting to build the desire the whole time. The headline builds desire, building that rapport builds the desire. But this is where you really dial that in, talking about what can happen, what's possible, how easy it is, how you don't have to do anything. That's desire.
And it could be introducing your product at that point. For the weight loss example, you grab their attention by saying, I was about to die. My cardiologist told me XYZ. Then the interest, you tell your personal story, how you lost 200 pounds, yada, yada. Desire would be showing them how they can do it as well. So you're really introducing the product as a solution to their problems.
You're making your prospect want it, absolutely. And finally, action. Don't just assume people know that you've got something for sale. You've got to ask for the sale. And you're going to put all of these into the video that you do: attention, interest, desire, and action. I want to talk about the process of the videos that we've done here over the last couple weeks for Project X. The first part of the process is you're going to write it out. We had actresses, is that safe to say, coming over for this video? A lot of little kids, also adults coming as part of this video. So we wrote everything out that needed to happen, basically kind of storyboarding it. Some people would call this a treatment, figuring out what it is that we needed to get on video before we actually had those cameras rolling. We knew every single scene that needed to be done and everything that was going to happen before the camera started rolling.
A lot of people think that they can just get in front of the camera and press the record button and go. You might have that talent. Most people, including myself and David, we don't have that talent. So you do want to script it out. You do want to make sure it makes sense ahead of time. And it's something that you want to run through to make sure it is the right length for your video and it is what you want to communicate. Maybe run it by some people before you just stand in front of the camera and do it.
Once you write it, once you have a basic idea of the big picture that you want, you've got to edit it. And this happened a lot. There were 2 or 3 rounds of editing because we wanted to get it concise. We wanted to have it short. Your attention span is only so long. I think we probably ended up with a 7 or 8 minute video at the very beginning. We're trying to get it down to about 4. So half of it was gone.
But we knew before we recorded it that it was going to be too long. So we wrote it out. We read it out loud. We chopped it down. We read it out loud again. And when we finally got it pretty close to what we wanted, to the time we wanted, then we started recording it. And then we edited it again after we recorded it. So there were a lot of stages in there.
We're still doing edits. The video is done. We don't know if the close is strong enough. There are edits done basically until you press publish.
We're mentioning length of videos here, David. You said attention spans, of course, are very short these days. What would you say the ideal length is for a sales video?
I don't think there is an ideal length. You have to do all the things we talked about. You've got to have attention, interest, desire, and action. Never too long, only too boring. So I would concentrate on, is the video moving forward? Is the sales process moving forward? Is it entertaining? Is it something that people are going to watch? Now, I wouldn't do a sales video on Kickstarter much over 7 or 8 minutes, but at the same time, there's probably some very, very long videos that could work on there.
I don't know if they let you upload a video that big.
Well, let's talk about what needs to be in the video. So forget the length for just a minute and ask yourself these questions. Is the focus always on the buyer? That was something that we had to look at in your video. And if you go to Kickstarter, you'll see a lot of times, especially in the musician sections, it's me, 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 me. These are my songs. I can't wait to put my songs on tape. Give me money. Me, me, me. Doesn't work.
And there was one guy on there who just wanted a camera to take some photos. So it had nothing to do with the listener. This is on Kickstarter. It had nothing to do with really anybody else but him wanting a camera. So you have to make sure that your focus in your video is on the people listening and not on you and what you need.
Is the focus always on the buyer? You've got very little to do with this, a lot less than you would think. How about redundancy?
That's a big one. When I first wrote out the video script for Project X, it was redundant. It didn't seem redundant when I wrote it. It seemed like this is all really critical information, but it turns out after editing it a couple times, I was repeating myself, and it became like a puzzle, like how to fit everything in that I want to say and say it well without repeating stuff, because you don't want to repeat yourself. People hear you.
Well, not only were you repeating yourself, some of the stuff was just not needed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's another big one. How much information do people actually need? You want the minimum amount because you don't want to waste any of their time. You know where I got good at this was working with a comedy writer, Rick Roberts from School of Laughs. Comedians are perfect at this because you've only got just a second on stage when you're a comedian. They might set you up with 3 minutes on stage. You can't waste words. You can't waste time. You want to have as many jokes within that few minutes as possible. And same for your sales video. As many punches to where you're asking for the sale, showing benefits, and letting people know that you've got the solution to their problems.
When I took Rick Roberts' comedy writing class, it really came down to the word in your joke. I mean, every word was important. Every word was scripted. If there was an extra the or a or and or something, it was taken out. And you might not have to be that strict on your video, but you do want to make sure that everything that's in there is needed, and it's needed for the person watching it, not for you.
A few other things you need to think about. Are you overcoming possible objections? It takes a lot to get somebody's credit card out of his wallet and have him type that credit card in the computer. Are you overcoming those objections? Has the price been justified? And are you closing with a strong call to action? That's what I just mentioned a minute ago. We're actually having to recut the call to action because we think it's not strong enough.
We've had to redo the call to action about 4 times now because it is one of the most important parts. If you get people that far in your video and then you just fall off, just drop off the end, you're not going to make the sale. That's ultimately the result you're going to get. So you want to have that strong call to action.
You have to be strong without being pushy, but don't meek out. If you've gotten them in 3 or 4 minutes into your video, don't just say, if it's convenient, if you don't mind, I'd appreciate your money. Don't do that. If you've got something that's going to solve their problem, let them know about it. Make them get their credit card out. Make them pay you.
And use strong language when you do this. When we first wrote the call to action for Project X, it said, if you choose to contribute to this campaign, don't use language like that. Assume that you've already sold them, that they're already on board, and now you're just telling them what to do.
We mentioned Rick Roberts a couple of times. If you're interested in getting better at writing, tightening up your writing, it has nothing to do with sales, but it also has everything to do with sales because that's all a comic is doing when he's on stage. He's got a great podcast. It's at schooloflaughs.com. Really sharp guy, and it's cool to see these guys and their writing. And that's one of the things that he really taught me about writing is a written joke, a written sales letter, a written book. It's never done. It's a living document, and that's why we can go back 4 times. We're not thinking this is done. We're thinking, this is what we've got now. Can we improve on it? And we're constantly looking to improve on it. With that said, eventually you're going to have to press publish.
You do. But let's talk about video options, David, because there are a lot of ways that you can put out a sales video. So let's talk about some of those formats.
Yeah, some people don't like being on video. Maybe you don't have great lighting. Maybe you're just nervous in front of the camera. So there are a few different options for you. Yeah, I don't like it. I like radio. I like broadcasting. I like podcasting. But when you get me in front of the camera, I clam up. And a lot of people are like that. Some of the people that we had for the Project X video, they were super, super fired up. Then we started rolling that tape. When the red light comes on, they get really, really nervous.
David won't even let me film him on my iPhone. If I hold that phone up in his face, it's pointing in his direction, he will run out of the room.
It's a generational thing.
You're shy.
Generational thing. I'm shy. People would not believe it. Let's talk about those 4 video options. First of all, if you're like me, you don't like being in front of the camera, slide presentation is great. You can have your voice behind a PowerPoint presentation. You can explain what it is that you have using the same formula: attention, interest, desire, and action. Sometimes it works just as well.
Keep it interesting, though. We have all seen bad PowerPoint presentations. And the point of having a video sales letter is that someone can watch something. So you want to make it fun and easy for people to watch. So keep that part of it interesting while you're talking behind it.
Screen capture videos using something like Camtasia or ScreenFlow. Those are great, and those are things that you can mix in with a slide presentation that would keep it more interesting.
Those are really helpful, too, because people can see what's going on. They can see things in action happening. Those are a little more engaging in my mind than just a straight-up PowerPoint.
The Project X video, this is what I call a talking head video. It's head and its shoulders. It's not unlike the news. You were just in front of a green screen, more or less, selling your message. There was also some other stuff that was involved with that, but it's pretty easy with a basic lighting kit. What is the lighting kit that we use? It might cost a couple $100.
Yeah, no more than that.
It's not much. Audio is the biggest issue in videos. You want to make sure that you're mic'd. And new cameras these days, we actually tried to shoot the Project X video on iPhone 6, but we had a little bit of a problem syncing the audio up.
I got the wrong cord.
Wrong cord.
Who knew?
So we had to go with a DSLR camera, and it looks great, but you can do this from your mobile phone. Isn't that amazing?
I know, the iPhones these days, and I'm not familiar with Android as much, but the iPhones have great cameras. They're easy to film. They've got apps that you can download to do all this and cords that you can plug in, exterior mics on them. They're great.
So don't just use a computer mic if you're doing a webcam video. Kickstarter is full of these really, really bad videos. It sounds like people are in a cave.
Oh, there's echoes, and it's the worst audio ever, and it distracts people from your message. You do not want people to be distracted from your message because you have poor video, poor lighting, or poor audio. Make sure that all of those are top quality so people are just honed in on what you have to say.
A fourth way that I think is easier than ever, and it's very, very effective, is what I call animation. There are a few different ways to do that. I sold a book that way, and we'll have that linked via the episode notes, which will be at redpodcast.com/74. You can have an automation animation. You seen this software, Laurel? It's like clip art, and they can deconstruct the clip art, and it looks like somebody's drawing on it. They'll put a hand.
You can get that on Fiverr, can't you?
You can get some of the things done on Fiverr. I don't think you could get an entire sales video, but I've had logos done that way on Fiverr. We'll link to that. I've got a friend, Nick Nevada, who actually does this by hand. And if you're looking for real animation, this is another great way to stand out because nobody's doing it. This guy's got videos that he's done for YouTube that have had hundreds of thousands of hits. They're very, very cool. It looks like something you would see on broadcast television. So if you're interested in real animation, I'll refer you to Nick, and I'll get you his information via the episode notes, which is at redpodcast.com/74. Any final thoughts on videos, Laurel? You've been in the trenches for the last couple weeks, and well before that, you had a video series for a long time, and you've done a lot of these.
Always expect it to take more time than you think it will. Just saying, oh, yeah, I'm going to throw up a video over the weekend. That sounds nice, but give yourself more time to plan this out, script it out, run it by some people. You know, make sure it's what you want before you put it out there because it does take a lot more work than you might think.
Agreed. We had one shoot that we thought was going to take about 2 hours that ended up taking the entire day.
Oh, yeah.
If you have questions or comments, check us out online at redpodcast.com. There you will find past episodes. You can also get in touch with us and let us know what topics you want us to cover on future Red Podcast episodes. Thank you so much for listening. If you like what we're doing, please spread the word. Let a friend know. Go to iTunes and leave a review under Real Entrepreneur Development. That will help us come up more frequently in the search engines. More people can find us, and we will build the Real Entrepreneur Development community. See you on the next episode.
You've been listening to Red Podcast, Real Entrepreneur Development. Subscribe today using iTunes, Stitcher, or via RSS at redpodcast.com.